So most of the introduction has been Bharti has introduced about me, but the quick thing is the present role. What I've been in is the cybersecurity global cybersecurity officer for marine and ports business in ABB. Especially, I'm leading the cybersecurity governance for ABB cybersecurity framework, which all our deliverables to customer, product, project, and services, which we offer to our customers. So I'll be handling of the governance, risk, and compliance for our products, and also my main focus was focusing on the industrial standards and regulations across our all the businesses within the business locations. And the main focus in my career, I was more or less in these 20 years, I was more into this computer networking, Windows, advanced services, and cybersecurity, more or less. And having 20 years experience, I can say that I have started my career from as a field engineer back in 2024, somewhere in Middle East, and from there I have learned many of the district cooling plants and oil pipelines, gas pipelines, and offshore platforms. From there, my career was evolved into the cybersecurity and advanced services. So I'm associated with the ISA member as a member from 2018. I've been closely following it up on all the activities which ISA is doing it. Looking forward for active participation as well. So and I've recently got my security expert certificate from ISA. Yeah, it was a glad to take this training from at this stage, and it's really helping me for going forward with my day-to-day work. And also I'm working with the cloud administrator level, which handling both AWS and Microsoft cloud related products. Next slide, please. Yeah, the safety first. I think if some of you outside and driving something, please make sure that your safety and the local regulations, and make sure you are fully aware of the road awareness and the place where you are. And this session is recorded, and we will be sharing with you all the details if in case you are traveling somewhere. Thank you. And next slide. Okay, disclaimer. I think all the information I'm sharing during this session, it's mostly for the informational purpose and knowledge purposes. And so any view written and discussed during this session, it's completely on me and nothing affiliated with my employer. Yeah. Okay, today's agenda, I think you can see the most of the topics which is covered here as part of the comprehensive approach, how we can significantly looking into the critical infrastructure production. So starting from what is the significance and moving forward to see why imperative to secure a critical infrastructure, and what is the cascade effect, because that's something which I really want to see how much it's been nowadays. We could be able to see that, and what is the key guideline to protect such infrastructure from the cyber threats, and also the common findings. We all know that, but some we ignore as it's not that critical, but we will see like what are the common findings, and also how to mitigate those common findings. So that's something, and not only common findings, but anything which is really required. We need to stage and into the design process, and that need to be incorporated when we do an implementation on the network level. And addressing the cybersecurity risk, one is very important because we need to approach a holistic things, not like this, buy something and install something and just leave it for some time and that it does the job for us. No, it does not work in that way for the OT security. It has to be holistic solution there. There need to be a regular assessment and monitoring is required. For the practical implementation, we see, because these are the things theoretically we know that, okay, what is there in that, but how practically when it comes to a real implementation. So I have some couple of examples to present today and see, and this will bring up a different dimension with respect to the security perspective. And architecture posture is one of the things which we always evolve, because it's not something which is written on the stone, which we have to follow as it is, because the standard evolves, guideline evolves, policy evolves. So it's not something which will be written today and has to be followed for many years. So the architecture also same way. So it has to evolve. So going forward, there are so much connected devices, a lot of data have to be analytical purpose. We have to pass it to cloud for many things. So this of course it has to evolve. So the finally it has to be a question and answers. Next slide. Thank you. The significance, if you take significance, I think first of all we need to know what is critical infrastructure protection itself. I think everyone knows what is critical infrastructure, but who is defining it? And of course, we could able to see from the CISA, they have the list of critical infrastructure. Of course, there are 16 they have captured. So all these 16 critical infrastructure sectors have so many subdivisions of that. So we don't have to get into so much of details, but my point here is that safeguarding these critical infrastructure is really important for an economical prosperity and also the welfare of the safeguarding of the national security. So we have seen many incidents, and we will also see one of the slide how this cascade effects really bringing into the risk of this critical infrastructure. And there are some critical infrastructure listed here: the energy, public healthcare, transportation system, and everything is interconnected. So if that is a impact in the energy, of course, there will be impact in your day-to-day life of getting those energy, such a power or gas to our household things, and also the fuel. Everything will get impact. Public healthcare also, we have seen many cases in UK where the public healthcare has standard with because of the ransomware. So these are the significance of the critical infrastructure. The next slide. Why securing is critical infrastructure is imperative is that the first thing is the national security, because it's really going to impact the national security, and we will question how safe we are in case of a colonial pipeline attack, or if you take the JBS food attack. And these are the things that really put a question mark and say, okay, how much secure we are, our national security is. So that always bring an economical impact when the country is growing like in India, and going in such a way of the GDP, and these things will get really affected. So the economical stability is also interconnected with that one. So the public safety is around that one, because when you consume the day-to-day products from this infrastructure, so we are normal people get impacted with these kind of critical issues. And also the societal trust and confidence. Of course, if the country is facing a lot of critical incidents, we will lose the confidence in our infrastructure, and we have seen many incidents happen like that. So this is very important for a country to keep it secure their critical infrastructure. So that's why it's very imperative. These are the four different pillars have to be tied together to have this kind of infrastructure in the country. The next slide. Next slide, please.
Yeah, examples of cascading effects, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Same slide.
Maybe some lag. Sorry. So the cascading effect, why this is one thing which we need to see this, like I just captured 4 of these major incidents everyone can connect to. So there are so many other incidents, like if you see the colonial pipeline attack, so they especially this is something which really put the operation of the pipeline in the risk, and they shut down for five working days, like or 5 days. It really the big incident I could see later to the causing the localized shortage of the fuel, gasoline and jet fuel. These are the very required outcome of this pipeline. So and there's a lot of case studies you can find from this one. The cascading of this one really impacted that particular sector and that particular region of the place it serves. And JBS is one of the largest meat industry companies. They have a worldwide chain available, and it completely the operation got impacted, and they have paid close to 11 million ransom for getting this thing out. So that's a huge thing, and really it got impacted in many ways. NotPetya, I think it's a very interesting to get into this one. I think that is one interesting Spotify you can find. Recently heard it's a very good podcast, and it has in and out of explanation of this NotPetya, where it started, how it's ended. So it's really a lot of technology, a lot of things can be learned from this particular incident. So this is one of the state-sponsored cyber attack, and it has a lot of cascading effect, which going forward spread locally and affecting. After that, after effect of this NotPetya also still continues with up to Musk, which impacted the ports and cranes. Saudi Aramco, I think it's quite we can relate to, because most of us on the energy industries, and we know that okay how much it got impacted, and it geoparadized the geopolitical dynamics and everything. So this is also you find a very good case studies out there, and this will give you a lot of awareness. And after this, I think we could see that as an organization level, they have far better coming out in many ways. If nowadays, if you want to reach or work in such kind of a big company, and they have a lot of regulations they put in place to connect to their system, and these are the different issues and incidents happened, and the cascading effects, it impacted the national security as well as to the day-to-day life. uh, Next slide, please. Okay, so what is the key guideline to protect our critical infrastructure and the cyber threat is, of course, the stake of the cyber threat, right? So how much is the stake we talk about? So starting from the power grid, if the nation's power grid is compromised, you just think about how much scale it goes, and it will impact the whole country or the whole place, and every business which is staying on the power, which will be get impacted to that. So understanding an inventory of the critical assets. So the asset inventory, one thing which we have not paid attention in the initial times of the OT security, but anything, if the customer or anyone who is planning for the large project or any kind of a brownfield projects, the first thing I would prefer to suggest them to go for an asset inventory, because this is one thing which you can know about your own house, or you know about your own infrastructure. Because before starting something, we should know what is exist now. So in a scale that, so that is the cornerstone of protecting the critical infrastructure. We need to capture all the assets, and that will give you a very good landscape of your thread. What kind of operating system you're using it, and what is your physical and digital components associated with that. And this will help the organization to define their policies and regulations, and they can move forward. So all you can start from deploying a network monitoring system on any legacy system. It's fine. You can just put a port mirroring on the switch and get all the inventories out there, and you can collect the inventories. That will be the starting point for any of such trunky projects or to plan something. So the asset inventory is one of the key step to move forward for any mitigation steps. And implementing the robustness measures, it's all start from the assets. We know our assets, we know our threats, we know our threat landscape. So everything is on the paper, on the things, and we can discuss on the table, right? What assets we have and what we are going to do with these assets, and how we are going to enhance our security posture. So that's all come from the measures, because the measures cannot be we cannot take just blindly. So we have to go with the proper data driven approach on that. Next slide, please. Okay, so bringing the silos, collaborating with stakeholders, because this is one area which many of the customers or those who plan for the project, they don't consider. Because when you go for a larger project, the first thing is like how many stakeholders are involved. So we used to see that, okay, this Modbus communication is not my thing, it is someone doing it, I'm waiting for that. DCS is different, and third party communication is doing by someone else. So we will always stay into that boundary, so scope of delivery, and the other things has to be done by the stakeholders. But who is connecting multiple stakeholders and collaborating these things to get these things done? Because end of the day, this everything is going to be on the network, and this network is owned by the asset owner, and we should be responsible as a system operator or system provider. So that should be a single point who can has to collaborate the stakeholders and bring them all into the same page to get this executed. Otherwise, it's really a very big challenge to implement any security measures in a larger organization. So developing security regulations. So once you have the assets, once you have what you want, your goal, strategy, and everything is defined, then this has to be converted into the regulations. So defining the regulations. So for these, before the organization want to define their disaster recovery procedures, incident response policies, supply chain policies, and whatever, so they want to define, they need to be, it has to be backed up with a data driven approach. So that's how the regulations has to develop. I think you have seen many customers who are doing a high level risk assessments before they start anything. That's mainly the reason. So they just want to criticality nature of their infrastructure. They need to capture as much as data before they make any update on their framework or the regulations. So that's many, it's one of the key guideline to protect the critical infrastructure. And for continual reassessment. So this is something which everyone we have learned over the time, because we do now and we implement something, and this cannot be there for so long. We need to reassess it, because the technology changes, threats changes, landscape changes. So we need to reassess it, and we need to see, because while going forward, the architecture cannot be stay as it is. You will be adding the wireless hard devices, you will be adding the IoT, you will be adding the edge, because the technology is changing and you're bringing in a lot of devices into the network. So you cannot relay with the assessment which is done 5 years before. So this assessment is one thing which we have to do it regularly to assess the infrastructure, and you have to continuously monitor your assets, and based on that, the key guidelines have to be updated. So these are the different key guidelines I've captured, which has really helped to protect the critical infrastructure. So the next slide, please. Okay, so this is the common findings. If you see the ICS network, these are the common findings we could relate to. Lack of cybersecurity awareness, because the training and campaigns is one of the very, very important things, because the people from the organization, they leave and the new people come to the organization, but how the information security, right? So we do a campaign for a phishing attack and so many other things the organization will start to do, but how much the OT security we are aware of that, and we are pushing such kind of a campaigns to the people who are working. So that should be like license to work or license to operate, because cybersecurity is license to operate. So like that, license to work. So we need to put the mandatory training in place and awareness in place. Without that certificate, without that training, the operator or whoever the engineer, he should not touch the customer system, or he should not work on the projects. That's how it is. Like you have to give that license to work for any of them who's really on the cyber deliveries. And that brings the really good approach to give the secure deliverables to all the to the customers, which is expecting the quality. And use of the USBs and internet connectivity, which is one of the things, because that's something even we cannot every organization try to control. I think nowadays you find a kiosk which you can just plug in the USBs and it will scan and it will give you the whitelisted device. So there are so many other ways to do that sanitization of this USB, but still we are learning, and this is the one thing many organizations have now controlled in a better way. And even you have a device control, there are many vendors provide the device control where you can just control the devices, which the policies will be in place on the endpoints. And that's one thing which is common, the things when it starts, because we say it's a disconnected, not facing to the internet, but there is a USB still open. So the backups verified and tested. So we take backups, and how many of the backups have been tested? That's very important, because during the disaster recovery, the people will run around and they will start to bring back the system for the minimum operation. That's fine, but the backups are tested, whether the drill has been done for the disaster recovery, because in the normal time, like how the safety drill has been done, we have to be do for the backups or the disaster recovery systems. We have to 6 months once these disaster recovery systems have to be bring in line online, and the people have to really test it. The people who are involved in that one, that should be a disaster recovery person responsible in a particular plant, and he should run that drill so that everyone is aware of that, how the backup works and where are the systems, and where is the offsite backup really stored, whether it is in a tape drive or it's stored in somewhere. So that's supposed to be known by the people who really on the operations. And unpatched and unsupported software, this really help. The asset inventory is really helping here, because that's where we will know what is the protocols and things like that. I think there are so many products out there which will help really get this asset inventory in a couple of enabling the port mirroring. You will get the complete network details and assets which is connected to that, and it will give you a broad overview of what are the unsecure protocols used in the network, because the unsecure protocols is something is it's a bit part of the ICS, because most of these protocols are not secure. That's why we want to keep this zone as a trusted zone, because we want to don't want to connect this zone directly to the internet. So there are multiple reasons why we are not connecting the ICS zone to the internet, because we handle the legacy protocols, we handle the unsecured protocols. So in that case, how much we are protected to that, how much we are aware of the risk on that one. So then moving to the vulnerability connectivity. So this is something like inadequate segmentation and bad firewall configuration. So if someone doing something and he just unable to connect to one network to other network, he cannot just directly go to the firewall and allow a temporary rule just for that sake of purpose and then do complete his job. It's not the way of doing it. So that should be proper segmentation has to be in place, and access control has to be in place. So anything you go and touch the ESD wall, how much approval you need. So you have to sign a lot of work orders, job cards to get into that ESD system, right? So that is quite equal to the touching the firewall or configuring it or reconfiguring the segmentation, because that will completely change the landscape of your network. And inadequate anti-malware solutions and monitoring. So that's something which is very badly seen. So in many cases, I see there is a commercial off-the-shelf products are available. It was not properly tested. So I think one of my experience, I've seen that there is a place where they have installed some of the antivirus which is out there in the internet, and it blocked and it completely put the quarantine of the file which is required by the system. So quarantine in the sense is just take it and move it to the file because it's fine that is a thread. So because of that, the whole process got stopped on that particular computer. So then it has been identified, and this has been added as an exclusion, because exclusion is the one thing which we trust the files and that need not to be scanned every time. So those are the common things. And inadequate IAM, that's very much important, because the domain controller and all the authentication system, user access management, multi-factor, and AAA radius, these all associated with the for the user access management. So in these, we have to clear very well. It has to be designed and structured, because when you set up the forest, domain forest, the multiple subdomains has to be created in the way that it can easily sync with the primary domain, and all the child domains have its hierarchical access to the users. So the local user access have to be fully LDAP kind of a thing. So you have to implement and make sure this local accounts has been have the not having the high privilege access. So these are the common findings, and each of the findings, at least you can just talk about an hour. That much details it is there available. So moving next slide, please. Yeah. The mitigation, right? So mitigation is one thing everyone is looking for. So we know the issues. What is the mitigations we have? So basically, the mitigation starts like defining our defense in depth, like how our securing our home, right? So you have multiple level of things, like we lock the door, and after the door we have the gate. After the gate we have the security sitting in. After the security we have the mobile app which someone has to allow. So these are even the apartment itself, you have this much level of access you need to get into the house. So same level of defense in depth. So there is a multiple level of security is required, starting from the physical security and moving to the network segmentations, further to the security controls like patching, application whitelisting, and device control to get into that. Finally, then it will go to the to reach to the particular asset, right? So this is a multi-level security. So this we call it as a defense in depth, and this has to be considered really to protect any of the physical threats. So for conducting the regular assessment is one of the things which can help for this defense in depth strategy. You can start from accessing from the like a walk into the operation floor and see how much the control panels are secured. So whether in the normal days you can just do a risk assessment with the floor engineer or a safety engineer and just go around and see the practical scenarios, and you also there is a threat intelligence also associated with that one. So you get, when you get the assets, you get also this threat intelligence and best practices you can generate from out of that. And enhancing the employee awareness, I was keep on talking about that, because I believe in training and campaign is required for the OT, because that's one area it still needs a lot of improvement. Establishing the incident response plan, because there is a lag here, because the incident response plan, most of the asset owners have their end. But when it comes to the system level incidents, they still see this is a system level incident, something OT incident, that this has to be addressed by the particular system provider. So in that case, there are two different incident plans. So it's supposed to be an integrated incident plans. So means if they have an incident plan an organization or a corporation level, our OT incident plan has to be a part of that one, and this has to be fully embedded into their process. Otherwise, this cannot be as a separate, because there will be a cascading effect from the IT to OT or OT to IT, and both people have to collaborate here. So the process have to be completely embedded, and that should be a playbook. So if you have a really critical infrastructure and you can just pass the events to the IT infrastructure, IT SIEM or a SOC solutions where you can keep a playbook for the OT critical events. That's very important because the IT people really want to educate on the OT side, and this playbook will help them to identify such of the critical things, and they can alert you because they are the 24/7 monitoring the SOC. Until we get the OT SOC, we are not so far yet there, but soon we will get some OT SOC. There are many places the OT SOC is there, but it has to be the future. It will come as a future for every customer. Will start use that and collaborate and sharing. Informations. Of course, the alert and notification is very much important because we are handling the commercial of the self products. If that is a vulnerability in one of the hypervisor, we should know that because hypervisor is the one fabric which you use to deploy your entire infrastructure. If that is the fabric, if the issue on the fabric, of course, we have to know. If you want to know that, you have to be subscribed to their alert and notifications, or it should be part of their cyber alert or advisory notification system. So that should be a dedicated person who should be in the OT organization, has to monitor all these alerts and notifications from the different third parties, and that has to be considered as a critical or non-critical stuff. They have to address it. So these are the different mitigations we have to look for when we try to address the issues. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
Okay, so addressing the cyber risk requires a holistic solution. These are the three things which has to be interconnected. So assess, secure, and monitor. So before anything, you have to assess it. You need to know all your systems, landscape, and everything. Moving forward, based on assessment, you know what to secure. So once you believe that you implement every security controls, what is required to secure and assess it based on the assessment, then you will monitor it because you cannot just implement the security controls and just sit and watch. It has to be monitored. You have many things, and right now I'm talking about maybe a couple of examples as network monitoring, which one thing, and the SIEM is the OT SIEM is the one thing, or you can move the events for the central SOC for the monitoring as well. So these are the three things has to be fully aligned, and this has to go as a cycle for to improve the security posture in any organization. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a critical security controls to secure infrastructure. I think these are the couple of points you can relate to. I think we need to start with the secure network infrastructure. That's very important. So for the security network infrastructure, there are multiple ways of doing it. Everyone knows the Purdue level, but how well the Purdue level we are designing it. What are the things we are considering designing the Purdue level? So everything matters. And incident response, as I said, this has to be an integrated incident response management process. It's not be like IT process, incident response, or system integrator level. There are multiple incident response. No, so it has to be fully integrated one. It has to be there. And then inventory and control assets. If that is a inventory has to be added in the OT, this has to be properly tagged and this has to be properly assessed or documented before it is added, because while moving forward in a larger infrastructure, there will be a lot of sub projects will happen and the assets will get added. So these are the network monitoring kind of a solutions will give you a complete visibility every time, and you can build asset inventory out of that. And that should be a separate software and hardware, because the hardware has a different life cycle and software has a different life cycle. And the software kind of inventory there will be a shorter life cycle, and this need to be very much active, because in our sector we call it as a dry docking, because the ship comes for the dry docking, we have to immediately act, and this has to be reacted. Same goes for the emergency, the shutdown time for the energy industries. If there is a shutdown, every vendor will be on the shutdown period, and they address their long-standing issues, and they will fix. And before the shutdown ends, it has to be on operation. So that's why these assets have to be live, and it has to be properly recorded. So continuous vulnerability management is one thing which is very much needed. I think we have seen many regulations, NIS2, CRA is the Cyber Resilience Act. Everything they're talking about, the vulnerabilities have to be reported to the notified body within 24 hours. Otherwise, it has to be a huge fine. So I think while we're speaking, these are the regulations out there, and there are some regulations which is already been enforced. So when the CRA is completely enforced, and we could able to see that even ISA is identified as a 62443 identified as a harmonized standard for CRA. So there are a lot of things happening around this topic, but vulnerability management is really required. Even US executive order also says that, and you can find such information from the Homeland Security from US. For conduct risk assessments is one thing, as keep on insisting, and this is really going well, I can say, because now the customer or any sectors, they really understand this importance of the risk assessment. And our 62443 giving a very good overview of our risk assessment overview, high level and low level detailed high level and detailed risk assessments. So that will really give us the criticality nature of the systems and how much the work which we have to do to enhance the security. And secure remote access. This is the convenience one, right? So 10 years before, connecting to the OT system is never happened from remote. We have to go there. We have to take a flight. We have to go there, get a permit, and then connect the system or visit the place. Now, sitting from any parts of the country, we connect to the system and we address the issues there. So the secure remote access is one thing which we need to be consider. So that's all mostly starts the maybe the entry point of many of the issues. And malware defenses is again, so there are multiple ways of doing it. Updating the signatures is a very traditional and old way of doing it. There are many other new technologies and things are coming up, but those are not very verified for OT of many products. But at least for staying with those kind of signatures, there should be a routine cycle have to be available to update the latest signatures and implement application whitelisting or device controls, such kind of an application to make sure that the endpoints are fully protected. And secure awareness and skill training, and that should be part of this kind of a process. And network monitoring and defenses, this is also one thing. A small or large or medium scale sectors, they have to start and they have to look into these things. So while we do all these things, we also there should be possibility. The budget and the cost is the things we can take a phase-wise approach. It's not like the first day one we have to implement everything. So we can just start from network monitoring, get to know our infrastructure, define the landscape, know the security risk, build the asset inventory out of that. Then you start plan what security controls you needed. So it's like a stepwise. So then you do the risk assessment based on these assets. So that will be a budget for every work that we do, and that's why we call it as CSMS. I think you might come across in ISA 62443. Cybersecurity management system is the one thing which we need to define to set up the budget and make the CISO or the CEO or whoever in the position they have to aware of such things. So to plan accordingly. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is like a practical implementation. I'm just captured some couple of examples here. I think most of you know this Purdue level. So Purdue level is nothing but the level of the segmentation of the network in multiple levels based on their security requirements and the logical network segmentation, right? So it's in general term definition. So we start from zero. It's more of a process, and one is the basic controls. Two is supervisory value, OT computers and HMIs, panels, everything is connected. And then level 3 is your site manufacturing things where you keep all your the workstations and file sharing servers and other historian and everything, you will keep it there. So going for the DMZ, it's called a secure zone because that's where you firewalled with the stateful inspection firewall, you control the traffic moving from the OT network to the IT network. And the site planning network, logistic network, it's something which is an interesting one because it's not partially connected to the internet. So it is not an enterprise network. This is specifically to the site. Like you have some kind of an applications like like a supply chain management, if you want to take an inventory systems or a printing system or anything, a scheduling or reporting system. So these are the things you need day in, day out business, site business activity. So those can be part of this L4. So the monitoring and database, this has been divided into two things because the reason monitoring will have all the security events stored. That is a classified information because if an attacker compromised and this is the information, we have to keep it in a separate zone. So this has been fully protected, and security events, they can, if it's compromised, this can be used to create a blueprint, and they can from there they can understand the network. So this is one of the critical things. So the monitoring zone where you have to deploy your IDS, event aggregators, and also log aggregators, and also the SIEM and other things. You can keep it here. And the database is purely about your historians and the other things which you handle the data. So that's the proprietary information so any of the companies is having. So if it's compromised, you will get to store about the 5 to 10 years of your proprietary informations, and that's very critical. So why these multiple zones are created? Because each has its own security requirements, and it has its own security levels configured in the network. So that's why L5 is divided into two. L5 has enterprise and enterprise DMZ. So enterprise, it's more of the thing which is required for the internet connectivity, like a SAP applications or MES kind of a thing, which has to be create work orders and stuff like that. Enterprise DMZ, which is something like a web server, FTP, or your VPN or a remote access, which is required for that particular business or a OT segment. That's supposed to have a separate security level. So that's my first point. And second is stateful inspection firewall. I think you see that is multiple firewalls here. If I just want to talk about south and north firewall, we can just call it like that. So the south firewall is more of facing towards the ICS network, and north firewall is facing towards the internet facing network. So the south firewall is the one which connects your DMZ and your ICS network. It will support both inbound and outbound. So ingress and egress both it supports, and it has it's completely the internal zone traffic movement here. So that's fully allowable. And when it comes to the north firewall, it's fully restricted for the inbound. So because there is supposed not to be a requirement for the inbound. So the outbound is the only thing which is required to communicate your VPN with a secure tunnel or your web server or FTP, which is required an outbound. The inbound is fully monitored with a stateful inspection firewall with IPS. So any inbound which comes, it will be completely a rule-based access, which is configured on the IPS, and it will block the unwanted input traffic. And pair of firewalls, I explained, this is how the traffic is controlled between the DMZ and things. There should not be anything supposed to be connected from L2 to L4 directly. That's the reason we have this multi-layered firewall. And two additional zones, which I explained about this monitoring and database, that's to isolate from the common systems, right? So if, for example, if the L5 is compromised, I should not compromise my event security event data, because that is more critical event which is stored, and it will give a lot of information about the protocols, unsecure protocols, IP addresses, and many other events which is stored, which is required for the forensic purpose. So that has to be the highest security level. Even if there is an incident, forensic will use these events. They will investigate the issues. And these are the main things you have to consider when you design the practical implementation of your network. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is logically, if you see the security controls, I would like to take four things, right? So access control, log management, remote access, network security. So these are the four things you have to build. Those are the building blocks. So anything you can do it as an ad hoc after that. But without these four things, if you create any security architecture, these security patterns are very much needed. So if I talk about access controls, I think we know that when you build a large infrastructure, so there will be a lot of possibilities. You have the local account, right? So I have a switch and the firewalls. Who is going to access that? So I can just keep a local users, but that doesn't really work in the way we need to consider. We need to bring in all the user access management for these assets, right? So the network devices and firewalls, kind of a radius or a AAA authentication or taxes from a Cisco, and these are the different things which is allow you to create a network policy server to manage these access controls. And when it comes for the Windows or Microsoft products, we know that we have a domain controller and Active Directory in place. But for the devices, we need to make sure that this the access control has been taken care. For the multi-factor authentication, for any untrusted network which is connected to the internet with the defined security level, you have to consider these multi-factor authentications on the enterprise networks. That's the entry point where you get into your network and you do multiple things from there. So it can be integrated to your organization factor authentications and multiple things. I think you know these three terms: something you know, something you have, something you are. So these are the things which you need to consider as when you design this two-factor authentication. And these are the different security patterns I've just highlighted as a tags, yellow tags, which you can just look in when you have this presentation in your hand. Next slide, please. Log management. So this is a very interesting one, because many country regulations nowadays, they bring this one. Even in India, we have this, any incident we have to produce the logs. I'm fully the text wise, I'm not fully aligned to that, but basically it has to be like 24 hours. Within 24 hours, the logs have to be produced or to the forensic for the investigation. So that's a very tight timeline, I can say, like 22 or 48 hours. Within that timeline, this has to be, the logs have to be there. So that means the amount of log, as much as you provide, the forensic can help you to find out where the incident started and how it's laterally moved from your systems, how much it got infected of the OT system or any of the system which is infected. So collecting the logs is one thing, which the best way of doing it, not like connecting all the endpoints to the log server and pushing the logs on the network, because these logs are creating a lot of noise in the network, right? So because you don't have to create kind of an ICMP traffic kind of a things that every now and then you cannot push like that. So you can design a log aggregator in your zone log aggregator. So that will collect your log, and then it will push it to log collectors, and then it will push it to the log aggregator. And there are a lot of open source products, and you have many vendors which is supporting to collect and correlate the log. But the main thing for this log collection is the timestamp, because when you do this, the timestamp will be considered as a very less critical one, because the timestamp is the one which is very much needed for the forensic to relate to the time, because they can easily know when the incident start by date and time. But when you go back in time and see exactly when it started, this timestamp really help to identify the origin of entry point of the issues. So the timestamp and how you collect the logs, it really matters when you design your security patterns on the network. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so the network security, this is again how much the network segmentation you're doing. Because when we talk about access control, you give an access control, someone cannot access it the next network, the other network. We think that, but as soon as you do a segmentation properly, the access control will not work how we expected. So the segmentation is the one thing will really restrict your access across the zone, and it will really bring in a value of your access control. So these two has to complement each other, and that's how it works, right? So starting from, we cannot implement just an IDS on a backbone network, because IDS, the main problem is the false positives. So because the tuning is one thing, it's continuously happening. So if you just implement on the backbone network, IDS will give you a lot of events, and you have to ignore many things because of the false positive. So implementing the IDS, we need to think about how the zone works and how much the zone traffic which is need to be analyzed. Based on that, you need to design the intrusion detection system. So but the IPS works in the different way. That has to be not supposed to be in the OT network. It has to be close to the perimeter firewall, which is on the L5 network, which only will monitor your DMZ traffic, which goes out and which is coming in from the corporate firewall. So it's a rule-based access, and many of these next-gen firewalls has the capability to configure those things. And so overall, implementing the AAA radius will help you to bring in this access control, and also segmenting the network and monitoring the network with the network monitoring will really enhance the security posture of the system. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so the remote access is this is another topic again. So how you enter into the system, right? So that's very important. So if a field engineer or anyone who wants to connect to the system, of course you need to create a very good checklist before he connects the system. So he need to know what asset he's using to connect. The asset, first of all, he starts from his laptop or some machine. He need to know whether his machine is fully patched and fully up-to-date antivirus is installed, and he's using the organization asset to connect to the system, because that's very important. Because when you connect, the security controls installed on the particular asset is also matters. So then what kind of connections you do, right? So you landed up in with a multi-factor authentication. Then from there you get into a VPN, which will be connect you to one of the machine on the DMZ. From there, the design itself, it's recommended to have a multiple jump servers. So the jump server want to connect to the your ICS network, because why we need, because the user which connects to that VPN, he might be using the corporate network, and moving from there to OT, he need a specific account needed. Otherwise, he cannot connect to the OT network. So that's why we segregate the separation of duties. If the IT engineer who connects and he don't know the OT, and he don't have to come to there, so he will be there and he don't have the user to connect to the OT system. So there is a separation of duties have to be clearly defined here, and that should be a user restrictions, access restrictions have to be in place. And since I'm mentioning about the gateway in the DMSR, that will encrypt your connection from there, so we can avoid all the man in the middle kind of a things, because it's there won't be any clear text messages can be intercepted when you connect of any of the network. When you're sitting from, even if you're sitting from the normal home network or wireless, so you will be fully connected to the VPN, and that will TSL, but it will completely encrypt your network with the traffic. So that will avoid all the protocols which is exposed there. So because you are connecting again to a jump server, from there you connect to the local network. From the second leg, you will be connecting to the ICS network. So this is one way of doing it, and this is quite a working well, which most of the time. And moving forward, we are still waiting for the next gen solutions on the remote platform. There are many things out there for cloud, but nothing which very close to our OT infrastructure. So again, we have to rely on these kind of VPN gateways to connect. So that's how one of the security patterns we can implement as a best practice.
Yeah. Thank you,
Yeah.
Prasanna, telling about the future or maybe forthcoming sessions. Thank you so much, Prasanna, for the first session of ours. And next month, we are planning to have another session, which is virtual, which is for asset and end user requirements. Maybe we'll be addressing to asset owners or expectations or requirements. And then we're also offline as a Bangalore, as a team. We are working upon the physical meet at Nama Bengaluru, where we can collaborate, connect, and beyond, where you will be able to see your old colleagues or maybe own colleagues, and connect and beyond with suppliers and sub-suppliers, and many more are going to come up. And then that event is a coming soon event, and about that details will be posted out. So all of you, please connect with us.